On this DeBacco University video, I'm going to go over outdoor site evaluation, keeping in mind if you want to have that site for cannabis production. All right, let's get into outdoor site evaluation for cannabis production. Well, first off, there's 5 main evaluation kind of standpoints here. You want to look at the history, visual, physical, chemical, and regulatory evaluation of any site that you might be considering to produce cannabis in. And none of these are more important than the other. They all kind of should go through and go through the evaluation process and make sure that you meet all of those proper evaluation standpoints so that you're able to go into a field knowing you have all of these, at least passing all these checkpoints, because there'll be plenty of challenges growing outdoors in general. So first off, the history evaluation. So when we're talking about the history evaluation, well, what was the site used for before? Was it dairy farming? It's likely to be high in phosphorus. Was it industrial applications? Are there any potential contaminants to consider? Was it a hayfield? The pH might need to be corrected. Why is it available? Other questions just to ask there. Is someone just abandoning the farm, or are they abandoning it because it wasn't productive for them? So these are just kind of that history, things you can ask about, looking back at kind of what it was used for, and have an idea of what you might be walking into, or at least what you should maybe have a little indication of what you spend a little more time reviewing. Then we take the simple visual evaluation. So this is the most basic and should be performed via a simple computer search and also a simple on-site look. There's great satellite imagery, so you can find a quick visual inspection of what's going on, and hopefully you can go there as well. Now, if you do make it out to the field, or have an option to make it out to the field, it's good to make the evaluation after a recent rainstorm, because you want to have an idea of how it may drain, or where water might be flowing to or from within a field. Now, what plant species are currently growing when you make that visual inspection? Things you should be asking yourself. Is it many weed species? Is it very disturbed soil? Or is it wetland species? Because this is likely a wet soil. It might be poor for cannabis production. Any inconsistencies do you notice? Are there empty pockets within the soil? It could be since prior usage, it could be spills in an area. Or sometimes those empty spots are rocks, or you see a lot of rocks kind of on the side or even within the field, because this could make cultivation quite a challenge. So you're going through a physical evaluation of the area. So what's the topography like? Is it very hilly? Because that could be a sign of possible soil erosion. Do you notice any rocks? Do you notice any large rocks? Because cultivation could be a challenge for weed control or even just initial planting. Also, do you know what the soil type is? How well will it allow root aeration to occur? And is there any ponding that you notice in any areas? Poor drainage can be a continual challenge and result in plant stunting, clearly as we see here in this field. Now, if it's one little pocket, one little area, no problem. But if you see a lot of this occurring, that could be a red flag there. Also, then we get into the chemical evaluation. So taking a soil test of the field. What does the soil test say? Looking at, after we pass all the other kind of steps, take a soil test. Great to do as you're also doing the visual inspection. This would be advised to get a full soil test done that looks for far more than just nutrients. What are you interested in the soil test on this potential field? Well, consider the pH. What's the organic matter, soluble salts, particle distribution, and possible contaminants such as lead and aluminum for sure is what I'd be checking. And many labs perform those tests normally. So just a good idea to get a good evaluation of the soil, good chemical evaluation to have an idea of, while it may look good, what does the kind of chemical profile of that soil test suggest? Because it also gets into, well, what amendments might you be looking at adding? Then we get into, lastly here, the regulatory evaluation. And even if a field completely checks out, growers should look into specific town regulations. This can be highly variable from one town to the next. So questions you should ask: can you build a structure? Good for cold frame construction, especially for early season propagation, something to consider. Any setbacks for cannabis production? So sometimes there are road or neighbor setback requirements. How far do you need to be from other areas? So there's also some distances greater for public property, such as a school, if that's nearby, something else to be considering looking at those zoning regulations. And then fencing or signage requirements. Does your town require a physical barrier, or is signage required? If so, what must it state and how large does it need to be? And just be aware of all of these things ahead of time, because it's one thing, it's going to be a lot of work to kind of go through and purchase an area or rent an area, but you want to make sure that it all checks out, at least from all these kind of evaluation standpoints, so that you can try to focus on the actual growing aspect and don't have to worry about any of these potential barriers preventing you from doing what you planned originally on doing for your cannabis production.